He laughed while rejecting her, but shattered when the Alpha King claimed her as his mate. The air smelled of damp stone and pine, and the silence carried a strange weight, as though the trees themselves held secrets they would never share. Within the castle walls, the nobility moved like shadows, their faces pale and carefully composed, while whispers of old curses and prophecies lingered in every corridor. Lyria moved through the grand hall with a grace that betrayed both strength and sorrow. Her dark hair, like a river of night, flowed over her shoulders, and her eyes, deep and stormy, reflected the faint torchlight. She was not like the other women of the court. They wore smiles as armor, but Lyria carried her truth openly, even if it was a dangerous thing to do. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, every word rehearsed, every gesture measured. Kale, the young nobleman with the charm of a sunbeam, had been the object of her quiet admiration. He laughed easily, drew people to him, and carried an aura of confidence that made even the boldest court ladies tremble. Yet Lyria, unafraid, had decided that she would show him her heart, regardless of the consequences. The great hall was alive with chatter when she approached him. Servants hurried past with silver trays, nobles exchanged subtle glances, and the Alpha King's presence lingered somewhere in the distance, though she could not see him yet. Lyria's heart beat like a drum in her chest, but she lifted her chin and walked toward Kale. "Kale," she said, her voice steady though her palms were slightly clammy. I need to speak with you." He turned, his smile warm but curious. "Lyria, you rarely come to me with words." "What is it?" She took a breath, feeling the weight of every eye in the hall. "I have felt this for some time. I care for you. I care more than I should, and I cannot hide it any longer." The hall seemed to pause. The flickering torchlight danced across his face, and for a moment Lyria thought she saw something, perhaps surprise, perhaps amusement. Kale laughed. It was not a cruel laugh, not entirely, but it carried a careless brightness that cut through her like ice. "You care for me," he said, shaking his head slightly. "Lyria, you honor me, but I cannot return your feelings. You are brave, yes, but your heart is too heavy for the life you desire." The laughter echoed through her chest like a sharp wind. Other nobles glanced at them, whispers spreading like wildfire. Lyria felt her cheeks burn, but she did not bow, she did not flee. Her pride, as stubborn as her heart, kept her standing. "I see," she said softly, but her voice carried an edge of steel. "I hoped for truth, not mockery. I hoped for something real." Kale's eyes softened, and he looked away, seemingly regretful, though she could not tell if it was for his laughter or for the wound he had caused. I am sorry, Lyria. You are remarkable, truly. But my path does not align with yours." And with that he turned, leaving her standing among whispers, her chest tight, her spirit burning with the strange heat of humiliation and anger. Alone, Lyria's steps carried her into the misty forest beyond the castle walls. The moon hung low, silver and watchful, spilling light through the branches. Shadows moved in unnatural ways, and a strange silence enveloped her. As she walked, her fingers brushed against the leaves, and she felt something stirring inside her, an energy she had never known. It began as a faint warmth in her chest, spreading slowly, pulsing with a rhythm that felt alive. Her vision blurred slightly, and the wind whispered through the trees like voices calling her name. "You are not ordinary, Lyria," the wind seemed to say. "The world does not understand your fire." Her heart raced, part fear and part wonder. She fell to her knees, clutching the forest floor, as the warmth inside her became a shimmering glow, wrapping around her like a cloak. The curse of old, the legends whispered by the elders, was awakening. They said that once every century, a woman would emerge with the power to change the fate of the kingdom. They said she would either bring salvation or destruction. Lyria's hands trembled as the glow intensified. She tried to call it back, tried to push it away, but it would not be silenced. A low hum rose in the forest, like the growl of a distant wolf, resonating with her heartbeat. Far above the forest, in the highest tower of the castle, someone watched. The Alpha King, immortal and formidable, had observed the hall earlier that night. From the shadows, he had seen Lyria's courage, her defiance, her heart laid bare. And when Kale had laughed, he had seen the spark that marked her, the spark of destiny. "She is mine," he murmured, his voice a rumble that seemed to shake the stone of the tower itself. "Not by choice, but by fate." The Alpha King's eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, golden like molten metal. His presence was commanding, yet lonely, burdened with centuries of solitude and the weight of a cursed kingdom. He had waited for her arrival, for the one who could share the strength of his heart and the fire of his spirit. Lyria did not know him yet. She only knew the warmth and the strange power coursing through her, and the sharp ache left by Kale's rejection. She remained in the forest, unaware of the fate that had already claimed her. Back in the castle, Kale could not sleep. His mind kept returning to Lyria's stormy eyes, to the unyielding courage that had driven her to confess her feelings. The laughter that had slipped from his lips now felt like a mistake, a wound he could not undo. But he did not know of the Alpha King, of the prophecy, of the unseen bond that had already begun to form. The next morning, Lyria awoke in a small clearing, the moon still visible in its waning sliver. The glow in her chest had faded, but a residue of power lingered, subtle yet undeniable. She rose to her feet, knowing that her life could never be the same. Something had shifted. Something had claimed her. And somewhere in the distance, a howl cut through the mist, a deep, resonant sound that spoke of power, command, and the presence of a being older than the kingdom itself. Lyria shivered, not entirely in fear, but in recognition, as though her very soul had heard the call and answered. She did not yet know that the Alpha King would come for her, that the bond of fate was already sealed. She did not know that Kale's laughter, once a dagger to her heart, would pale in comparison to the storm that destiny was bringing. But she would soon learn. Because that night, as the forest whispered and shadows moved in secret, the Alpha King stepped into the clearing. His eyes were molten gold, his presence impossible to ignore, and his voice, low and commanding, carried through the trees. "You cannot hide from me, Lyria. The bond has begun. The prophecy is alive, and you are mine." For the first time she felt a shiver of awe, of fear, and of something deeper, an unnameable longing that tugged at her very soul. And far away in the castle, Kale's laughter from the night before rang hollow, leaving a hollow ache in his chest. He could not know the forces that had already moved, the chains that destiny had begun to forge, or the power that Lyria now carried within her. The forest fell silent again, but the air was electric with change. Lyria's life had shifted forever. She had been rejected by one, claimed by another, and cursed, or perhaps blessed, with a power that could either save or destroy the kingdom. And so, in the shadow of the misty trees, beneath the watchful eyes of the moon, Lyria's journey began. The prophecy whispered through the leaves, "The destined mate awakens, the Alpha waits, and the kingdom shall tremble." The forest was alive with a strange, electric silence. The trees seemed to lean closer, their branches whispering secrets in the cool night air. Lyria stood at the edge of a moonlit clearing, her heart still racing from the strange power that had surged within her the night before. She could feel it lingering, a subtle warmth in her chest, a quiet pulse that reminded her she was no longer an ordinary woman. Then, without a sound, the shadows shifted. A figure stepped from the darkness, tall and commanding. He moved with a grace that seemed almost unnatural, like a predator who had hunted for centuries yet never tired. His eyes glowed gold in the moonlight, molten and piercing, and the air around him seemed to hum with a power that made the leaves tremble. "You cannot hide," he said, his voice deep and resonant, carrying both authority and an almost sorrowful weight. "I have waited a long time for you, Lyria." She swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. Who are you?" The Alpha King stepped closer, his presence overwhelming yet strangely compelling. "I am the Alpha of this kingdom," he said, the one your heart was meant to find, the one the prophecy speaks of. You are mine by destiny whether you wish it or not. Lyria's breath caught. Her mind swirled with confusion, fear, and a spark of something she could not name. Mine, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You don't even know me. He smiled faintly, a sad and knowing smile. I know what matters. I have seen your courage, your fire, your strength, even when others could not. I know your heart, Lyria, even before you knew yourself. She wanted to step back, but her legs refused to move. His presence was magnetic, terrifying, and fascinating all at once. She had felt power stirring in her before, but now, near him, it surged stronger, like the forest itself recognized him. And Kale, she asked, her voice shaking slightly. He laughed at me. He. The Alpha King's expression darkened, though he remained calm. Kale is but a man, limited, small in ways that cannot compare to what lies before you now. His laughter cannot harm you anymore, but your strength, your true self, can only grow with me. Lyria's eyes filled with both fear and frustration. You speak as if I am a prize, something to claim, she said, her voice rising. I am not yours. He tilted his head, as if amused yet not without respect. You do not yet understand. The bond is older than kingdoms, older than men, older than the forest itself. You are tied to me in ways you cannot yet imagine. Fighting it will only hurt you. Accept it, and you will see your true strength. Her heart raced. She wanted to argue, to flee, but instinctively she knew the forest itself would not let her. The trees seemed to bend toward him, and the moonlight shone directly on his golden eyes as if the world had aligned for this moment. Why me? She whispered, almost to herself. Why not anyone else? He stepped closer, so close that she could feel the warmth of his presence, yet he did not touch her. Because you are the one who can balance me, who can stand beside me when darkness rises, who can turn a kingdom from despair into hope. You have the fire, Lyria, and you do not yet know how to wield it. The weight of his words pressed on her like the night itself. For the first time, she felt that her life, her choices, and even her feelings were entwined with forces far greater than she could comprehend. Her pulse quickened and the strange warmth in her chest grew stronger, almost alive. Do you even know what you are saying? She asked, her voice trembling. You speak of fate, prophecies, of bonds I cannot see, but I am just me. The Alpha King's gaze softened. No. You are not just you. You are a force, a light in the darkness that even I have waited centuries to see. You were born for this, Lyria. And now, whether you believe it or not, the world begins to shift around you. Lyria looked down at her hands. She could feel the faint shimmer of magic lingering in her fingertips, a power she had never known. The forest seemed to pulse with it, responding to her emotions, her anger, her fear. She was no longer ordinary, and she knew it in the marrow of her bones. I don't know if I can do this, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. You will, he said softly, yet with a command that brooked no argument. Because I will not let you fail, and because you will not let yourself fail. You are mine, and I will protect you, but only if you allow yourself to embrace what you are. The words struck her in ways she did not expect. Fear mixed with awe, hesitation mixed with fascination. He was frightening, yes, but also undeniable, a force of nature, a being of immense power and authority. And yet, he spoke as if he saw her not as a pawn, but as a partner. In the distance, Kale watched from the forest edge. His heart raced as he observed the scene. He saw Lyria standing, trembling but unyielding before the Alpha King. He saw the golden eyes that seemed to pierce her very soul, and he understood in a way that filled him with dread that he had no power here. His laughter, his charm, his past connection with her, all of it meant nothing compared to what was unfolding. Kale's hands clenched into fists. He wanted to step forward to call to her, to reclaim her, but he felt frozen, powerless against a force far beyond his understanding. Back in the clearing, Lyria's resolve began to shift. She could feel the strange bond forming, subtle yet undeniable. Her power, awakened the night before, now hummed with strength she could not control, but she could sense its potential. And standing before her, the Alpha King radiated a strength that made her own pulse feel like a drum echoing through the forest. She began, searching for words, I don't know if I can trust you. You do not need to, he replied. Not yet. Trust is earned. But destiny does not wait, and I will not wait either. The forest seemed to lean closer, as if it too listened to his words. Shadows danced in the moonlight, creating shapes that were both frightening and beautiful. Lyria felt the strange warmth in her chest surge once more, and she realized that the connection was no longer one-sided. Her power responded to him. The trees swayed as if to his will, the leaves shimmered faintly, and the air hummed with the force of an ancient magic. She gasped both in fear and in awe. You see, he said, his voice low, almost a whisper, yet carrying a resonance that touched her very soul. We are connected. The bond has begun, and whether you accept it or resist it, it will shape both of our fates. Lyria's heart ached with conflicting emotions, fear, fascination, anger, and a strange longing she could not yet name. She wanted to run, to escape the weight of destiny pressing on her, but she knew deep down that the forest itself would not allow it. Something older, stronger, and far more powerful than herself had claimed her. The Alpha King stepped even closer, and she felt the heat of his presence wash over her like sunlight through winter fog. Do not fear it, Lyria. Fear is natural, but so is strength. And you have both. Lyria swallowed hard, feeling the truth in his words even as her mind rebelled. She had been rejected once, laughed at once, but now she stood before someone who could match her strength, someone who saw her not as a woman to be mocked, but as a force to be reckoned with. And in that moment, she understood something she could not yet fully name. The Alpha King was not merely a ruler, not merely a man, but a storm, and she was being called to stand in its center. Somewhere in the forest, a distant wolf howled, its cry echoing the rhythm of her heartbeat. The sound seemed to seal the moment, binding her to a path she could neither escape nor deny. Kale, hidden in the shadows, felt a pang of despair so deep it nearly broke him. He had laughed once, and in doing so, he had set in motion events he could never undo. The Alpha King's golden eyes, the aura of power surrounding him, and the quiet command in his voice left Kale powerless to intervene. And Lyria, trembling yet unbroken, realized that her life had changed forever. She had been claimed not by force but by destiny. She had been rejected by one and now drawn toward another, a being older than kingdoms, stronger than kings, and yet, somehow, incomprehensibly, capable of seeing her as she truly was. The Alpha King extended his hand, a silent promise and command in one. Come with me, Lyria. The night is long, the kingdom waits, and your power will not grow in hiding. Her eyes met his, and she saw centuries of loneliness, of sorrow, of unspoken burdens reflected in his golden gaze. And despite the fear, despite the anger still lingering from Kale's rejection, she took a step forward, because she knew in her heart that she could not turn back. The forest seemed to breathe around them, the shadows shifting like living things, as destiny wove its threads tighter and tighter. And somewhere far away, Kale's laughter from the night before rang hollow in his ears. He understood at last that he was powerless to reclaim what had already been taken. The bond had begun, the prophecy was moving, and the kingdom of Urindor would never be the same. The sun rose over Urindor, painting the castle walls in gold and amber. The forest, still shrouded in mist in the early hours, seemed to hold its breath. Lyria stood at the edge of the clearing where the night before she had met the Alpha King. The memory of his golden eyes and the surge of power she had felt lingered in her chest like a slow, steady drumbeat. She could no longer deny that something ancient and commanding had touched her soul, something that both frightened and fascinated her. Yet despite the awe, a part of her heart still ached for Kale. His laughter had been cruel, yes, but she remembered the warmth in his smile, the easy charm that had drawn people to him. Could she allow herself to feel loyalty or longing for him, while knowing the bond with the Alpha King had already begun? The question tugged at her, leaving her restless and uncertain. The Alpha King appeared silently, stepping from the shadows as though the forest itself guided him to her. He moved with his usual grace, yet there was a subtle tension in his posture, a quiet urgency that matched the rhythm of the forest around them. "You linger on what was, not on what is," he said softly, though his tone carried authority. "Your heart is torn, Lyria, that is natural, but hesitation will not serve you, neither will fear." Lyria swallowed, forcing herself to meet his gaze. I do not know how to feel." "I am drawn to you, yes, but Kale," her voice faltered. "I still think of him, I still wonder." The Alpha King stepped closer, the golden light of his eyes reflecting the rising sun. "And yet, when Kale was before you, did he offer strength? Did he see you for who you truly are?" Her jaw tightened. "No," he laughed, "Yes," the Alpha King interrupted gently, "he did not understand. But that is the point, Lyria. The past cannot shape the future. Your strength, your destiny, lies ahead, and it lies with me." A shiver ran down her spine, part fear, part exhilaration. She had always been told she was strong, but she had never truly felt it until the power within her awakened. The bond with the Alpha King amplified it, made it pulse like a living thing, yet she did not fully understand its nature. Before she could speak, a rustle came from the forest edge. Kale stepped into the clearing, his expression tense, eyes filled with conflicting emotions. He paused, looking at the Alpha King, then at Lyria. "Lyria, she turned to face him, anger flaring in her chest. "Do not, Kale," she said firmly. "You have no place here. Your laughter, your rejection, it brought me here, but it cannot bring me back." Kale's shoulders fell slightly, the fight draining from him. I did not know. I never thought that something like this could happen. I did not know what I had in front of me." The Alpha King's gaze swept over Kale like a silent storm, powerful and unyielding. "You do not understand," he said, his voice low and steady. "You never will. Step back, Kale. You are no longer part of this path." Kale's eyes glistened with frustration and regret. He wanted to argue, to reclaim what he had lost, yet every instinct screamed that he was powerless here. The Alpha King's presence was overwhelming, a force that brooked no opposition. Lyria could see it in his face, the realization that he had lost not because he lacked desire, but because he could not compete with destiny itself. Lyria took a deep breath, feeling the bond pulse through her. Her heart raced, not with fear alone, but with a strange exhilaration. The power she had felt before was growing, responding to the Alpha King, responding to the choices she had yet to make. "Kale," she said softly, her voice steady now, "you cannot stand in my way. The path before me is not yours to claim. Your laughter and your pride cannot undo what has begun. You must accept that, or you will only bring yourself pain." Kale looked at her, his chest tight. "I see it now," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "I see that I cannot change your destiny." "Not with him, not with," he trailed off, unable to finish the thought. The Alpha King reached out, a subtle gesture of strength and reassurance, and Lyria instinctively moved closer. The bond between them, invisible yet undeniable, pulsed with a warmth that steadied her fears. She realized then that she was no longer alone. For centuries, the Alpha King had borne the weight of his kingdom, of old curses, of loneliness, but now he shared it with her. The forest seemed to react to her acceptance. Leaves shimmered with a faint glow, the wind whispered through the branches in a melody only she could hear, and the morning light reflected off her hair like fire. Power, once raw and untamed, now felt guided, shaped by her will and her connection with the Alpha King. Kale stepped back, sensing the shift. I am too late," he said finally, a mixture of sorrow and resignation in his voice. I cannot compete with this." "Yes," the Alpha King said, his voice firm yet not unkind. "You must leave, Kale. This is not your place." Your path lies elsewhere, but hers is bound to me. Kale nodded, the weight of defeat heavy on his shoulders. I understand, he said quietly, and without another word he vanished into the forest, leaving Lyria and the Alpha King alone. The clearing seemed to sigh, the tension easing, yet a new challenge hung in the air. Lyria could feel it, the weight of expectation, the pull of prophecy, the responsibility of the power now coursing through her. She could not yet control it fully, but she knew that she would have to. You are ready to see the truth, the Alpha King said, his voice both gentle and commanding. The kingdom, the forest, the prophecy, it all begins now. But to walk this path, you must accept both the light and the darkness within yourself. Lyria nodded, though her chest tightened. She had accepted the bond, but acceptance did not erase fear. She still wondered if she could live up to the expectations, if she could wield the power growing inside her without losing herself. The Alpha King extended his hand, and she took it. The connection surged stronger, warmth and strength mingling in a sensation that was both thrilling and terrifying. She felt the pulse of the forest, the rhythm of destiny, and the weight of centuries pressing on her shoulders. Together, he said softly, we can face whatever comes. But know this, Lyria, enemies will rise, shadows will test you, and even your own heart may betray you. You must be strong. Lyria swallowed, feeling the bond respond to his words. Strength, yes, but also courage. She would need both if she were to survive what was coming. Suddenly, a shadow flickered in the distance. From the edge of the forest, shapes moved, figures that had long watched the kingdom, waiting for the moment to strike. Old enemies, those who had tried to claim the Alpha King's power before, now stirred. The danger has already begun, he murmured. The moment we claimed our bond, the world noticed. You are not yet safe, Lyria, and the path ahead will not be easy. Her heart raced, but this time it was not only fear, it was determination. She could feel her power, her will, her connection to the Alpha King solidifying. She would not flee, she would not falter. The prophecy had chosen her, and she would rise to meet it. The Alpha King's golden eyes softened as he looked at her. We begin at dawn, he said, but tonight you rest. You gather your strength. Tomorrow the kingdom will see that the Alpha King is no longer alone. Lyria nodded, the glow of her power mingling with the first rays of sunlight. The forest seemed to hold its breath again, waiting for the day to come. And somewhere in the shadows, Kale watched, his heart heavy with regret. He had laughed once, and now he realized the depth of what he had lost. But there was nothing he could do. Destiny had moved, and he was powerless to alter its course. Lyria and the Alpha King stood together in the clearing, the bond between them stronger with each heartbeat. The forest hummed around them, alive with magic and anticipation. The kingdom itself seemed to acknowledge the change, as if the stones and trees remembered that a new power had arisen. The prophecy was no longer a whisper. It had begun. And the kingdom of Urindor would never be the same. The sun had risen fully over Urindor, casting golden light across the castle towers and the dense forest beyond. Lyria stood at the edge of the clearing, her eyes tracing the horizon where mist clung to the trees like a shroud. The power within her had grown stronger with each passing day, guided by the bond with the Alpha King. She no longer felt its surge as something frightening. It was a living part of her now, a rhythm that pulsed with her heartbeat. The Alpha King stepped beside her, silent and commanding. His golden eyes reflected the morning light, but more than that, they reflected a quiet relief, a centuries-long burden easing with her presence. The bond between them was no longer tentative. It was solid, unbreakable, and as much a part of the forest as the trees themselves. You have grown, he said, his voice soft but filled with power. Stronger than you imagined, braver than you believed. The kingdom will see it soon. And the prophecy will be fulfilled because of you. Lyria nodded, though her chest tightened. Strength and courage were now hers, but so was responsibility. She felt the weight of the kingdom's future pressing upon her shoulders. Every shadow that lingered in the forest, every whisper of the wind, reminded her that challenges were yet to come. "They will test me," she murmured, more to herself than to him. "Not just the enemies, but everything inside me. My doubts, my fears, even my heart." The Alpha King placed a hand gently on her shoulder, a grounding presence. "Yes, but that is why we are together. You are not alone. Together we can face any darkness, any challenge, any threat. And you will find that even fear can be transformed into strength when it is guided by purpose." A rustle came from the forest edge, sharp and sudden. Both of them turned. Figures emerged, cloaked and determined, eyes glinting with malice. These were those who had long sought the Alpha King's power, rivals who had failed for centuries, now emboldened by the stirring of destiny. "You should have remained hidden," one of them hissed, stepping forward, a blade glinting in the sunlight. "But now we will take what is rightfully ours." The Alpha King's golden eyes blazed. Lyria felt the surge of his power as if it were flowing directly into her, intertwining with her own. Her hands glowed faintly, the forest responding to her presence like it recognized its rightful guardian. "Together," he said, his voice low but steady. "Now." Lyria stepped forward, her fear replaced by determination. The energy within her had grown, shaped not only by the bond but by her own resolve. As the cloaked figures attacked, she unleashed a controlled surge of her power. The air shimmered, the leaves swirled, and the enemies stumbled, unable to comprehend the force they faced. The battle was swift, precise, and overwhelming. The Alpha King moved with lethal grace, his golden eyes calculating every strike, every movement. Lyria mirrored him, not blindly, but guided by instinct, courage, and the bond that connected them. Together they were a force unmatched, a storm that no rival could withstand. When the last of the enemies fell, the forest grew still again. Lyria stood, chest heaving but unbroken. She looked at the Alpha King and he nodded, a silent acknowledgement of her power, her courage, her transformation. "You have faced them," he said, "and you have not faltered. But this is only the beginning. Your destiny is larger than even this victory." She swallowed, realizing the truth in his words. The prophecy had begun, yes, but it was not only about power. It was about understanding herself, embracing her place in the world, and accepting the bond that tied her to the Alpha King. Kale's presence still lingered in the back of her mind. She had loved, been rejected, and yet now she stood on the edge of a new life. Would she ever feel for him again? She realized that her feelings had shifted, transformed by experience, pain, and growth. Kale's place in her heart was no longer one of longing, but of understanding, a reminder of what had been and what she had overcome. The Alpha King stepped closer, golden eyes meeting hers. "You have done more than survive, Lyria. You have embraced yourself. That is the greatest power of all." Her gaze softened. I feel it. The bond, the power, it is part of me now, not because of fear, but because I have chosen it." He extended his hand. "Then let us move forward together. Not as master and subordinate, not as ruler and subject, but as partners, as equals." Lyria placed her hand in his, and the connection surged again, stronger, steadier, a perfect balance of power and trust. She felt a sense of peace, of purpose, as if the forest itself had aligned with her heart. "Together," she said, her voice steady, full of conviction. The Alpha King smiled faintly, and for the first time the centuries of solitude that weighed on him seemed to lift. The bond they shared was no longer a prophecy alone. It was a promise, a living connection that would shape the kingdom, the forest, and their lives. The kingdom stirred as news of their union spread. Nobles whispered in awe, servants paused in wonder, and the forest seemed to hum with anticipation. Lyria and the Alpha King were no longer isolated figures. They were symbols of strength, hope, and transformation. As evening fell, they stood together on the balcony of the highest tower. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows and bathing the castle in fire-colored light. The wind carried the whispers of the forest, the rhythm of destiny, and the faint echoes of prophecy. "You have transformed, Lyria," the Alpha King said softly, "and in doing so you have transformed me." She leaned slightly into him, feeling the warmth of his presence. "We have transformed together," she said. "Not because it was easy, not because it was forced, but because we chose it. I chose it." He nodded, his eyes reflecting the deep gold of twilight. "And now the kingdom will remember this union for generations. They will see that power is not only in strength, but in trust, courage, and love." The wind shifted, carrying a faint, melodious whisper through the forest. It was a reminder that even after victories, challenges could arise, that even in peace, vigilance was necessary. Yet Lyria no longer felt fear. She felt readiness, a steady certainty born of experience, bond, and understanding. Kale, far in the shadows of the forest, watched the scene. His heart was heavy with regret, but he had learned a final lesson. Love cannot be forced. Laughter cannot reclaim what destiny has taken, and strength is not always in winning, but in accepting what cannot be changed. Lyria turned to the Alpha King, golden eyes meeting golden eyes, and felt a quiet thrill. She was no longer a pawn of fate, no longer a woman rejected and lost. She was a partner, a force, a bond that could shape kingdoms and forests alike. The moon rose, silver and watchful, as night fell over Erendor. The Alpha King placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, and Lyria felt the warmth of their connection ripple through her once more. "Together," he said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries and the promise of the future. "Yes," she replied, steady and strong. "Together." And in the quiet of the night, the kingdom of Erendor held its breath, knowing that a new era had begun. One of power, unity, and hope. One shaped by courage, love, and destiny. The prophecy had been fulfilled, not by fear or force, but by choice, trust, and the courage to embrace what lay within. And Lyria, once laughed at and rejected, now stood at the center of a myth in the making, a force of light and strength beside the Alpha King who had claimed her, not by power alone, but by destiny and heart. The forest whispered its approval, the wind carried the echoes of victory, and the stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if acknowledging that a union forged in courage and trust would endure forever. The kingdom of Erendor would never be the same, and neither would Lyria.